So this building used to be known as the Merchant Hotel, and it was established in 1880 by the lumber baron trio, the Nikolai brothers. This building took up a half a city block. It was a very bustling center of activity in town. What do we think some big industries around here during this time period were? Timber, totally. What else? The other one I'm looking for is maritime. Yeah, timber and maritime were the big two. So what do we think the ratio of men to women was? 1. That's a really close guess. Like 15 men to 1 woman. Oh, wow. So what do we think some jobs for women were? So we had our seamstresses here. They would call themselves seamstresses. They were the ladies of the night. And they wrote this on their taxes to stay on the down low, kind of like saying you're an accountant. No, it is, right? So they were working on the 3rd floor of the building, and we had shady things like this happening here, but we were considered a pretty high-end establishment. So what made us high-end? Well, we had full gas lighting. We had full indoor plumbing. We weren't throwing our sewage on the streets like the commoners. And we also had our new hydraulic elevator. So the one you see here today is not the original. The original was just behind it, inside of this sitting nook that's right through that window in the back of the restaurant. And the sitting nook has been, they've gutted all that heavy machinery out, and they also cut off a part of the elevator shaft right there. It used to go all the way up. This is where the story of our resident ghost most starts and stops. Has anybody heard of our resident ghost? Nina? Yes, we have heard of her. Great. So Nina was a seamstress here in the Merchant Hotel. And we're going to have a group that's going to be passing through here in just a second and interrupting this story. But we're going to just clear a path for them right here. Okay, so she is our resident ghost. Natasha! We're not gonna wait for that. So Nina was a seamstress here at the Merchant Hotel, and she lived and worked on the 3rd floor of the building. And she was living there with her 12-year-old daughter. So as you can imagine, she didn't choose this lifestyle. She wanted to get out of this terrible living situation and find a better life for the both of them. And one day she thought her prayers were answered. She was approached by a group of men. And who these guys are is up for some debate. Some people believe they were missionaries here to clean up the town. Other people think they might have been private investigators. But whoever they were, they wanted to make a deal with Nina. And they said that they would help Nina and her daughter to get out of this terrible situation if they would give them some information about the shady things happening here in the building. So Nina decides she's going to take a chance. She is desperate, and she gives them the information that they're looking for. You can pass through.
If we can step behind the wells, we definitely step that way a little bit.
Yeah.
I can make a beeline behind the well.
Perfect.
If you're going to go through that door dead ahead.
So Nina decides to give them the information that they are looking for. And whether these guys knew what they were doing or not, they made a silly choice at that point. They took this information to the police. And at the time, the police were very, very corrupt. They had their hands in the shady things happening here in the building. And so they came to the owners of the building. They said, do something about Nina or else. And a few days later, she's found passed down the elevator shaft, and she meets her demise at the bottom. So to this day, people still come to hang out with her inside of her sitting nook. And some signs that you might be in Nina's presence include smelling her perfume. I will share what it smells like at the end of the tour, then we can verify if you smell anything along the route. You may hear the rustling of her long black skirts, or you could hear a soft whisper of her voice in your ear. Were you part of the other group?
Yes.
Through the door. So before we head downstairs to our working basement area to talk about some of the strange things we've had happen down there, and then we'll head deeper into the underground network to talk about the horrible history, I want to know who believes in the supernatural. We have believers. Any open-minded, like maybe? Any non-believers? Non-believer? I would say shut the non-believer. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm in the open-minded category. I used to work at a haunted location in California. It's the Queen Mary in Long Beach. It's a very haunted ship, and I played a woman on the ship who had disappeared. I was an actor there for like 5 years, and I was working in some of the most haunted areas of the ship at like midnight on Halloween, and I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm hoping that maybe today will be today. Let's head downstairs.
Okay. I want to be last. I don't want to be last. I want to be last. I would want to be last.
We're gonna gather into the dining area just for a sec. And then we'll head on and squeeze through this door. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Very steep stairway. Please hold those railings and watch your head at the bottom. There's a low overhang.
Do you think she'll notice? No. Well, she has to count how many people come up, and if extra comes up, she might be freaked out. Like, where did we get these other people? Oh my gosh. She.
Oh, excuse me. The rain makes me sleepy. All right, so we have some items. First, this menu. This is for Hobo's Restaurant and Lounge, and we're going to be underneath this restaurant during a certain part of the tour. So it closed back in 2020, and they used to have the tour starting at this side, and now we're going basically backwards through the space that they used to go through when it started on that side. Back here, we have a historic establishment here in town that was also really, really big during the 1800s, around the same period as the Merchant Hotel. This is Erickson's 9-Bar Saloon. So they were known as the working man's bar. It was one of the biggest bars like ever. This bar took up a whole city block, and the bar went the entire way through the bar. Like, it was long. And my favorite thing is, well, one of my favorite things is they have this porcelain trough under the bar. What do we think that's for? For peeing, yeah?
Yeah.
So, yeah, they wanted to be very efficient, right, with their drinking. So they had that urinal there, and they also had this, like, railing over it to prevent people from getting their feet in it. And there's a really, really big historic flood in Portland called the Great Flood of 1894. And during that flood, we had water levels in the Willamette and the Columbia like rising 30-ish feet above usual levels. So there's water rushing in the streets, okay? And Erickson's was completely submerged during this flood. So they decide that they're going to get a barge and float it outside of Erickson's and stock it with booze and dancers. So they just had people coming down the street in their little like rafts and stuff, and they would stay all day to drink. I know, right? Iconic. So let's come around the corner here. And take a look at this ramp and let me know what you think it might be for.
Dead bodies?
Wheelchair accessibility.
Good guess. Not quite.
Body shoot?
Bodies. I love that guess. It is a morbid tour. So this is for our cakes. They weigh like 170 pounds, so we just bring them straight from street level. Much more convenient than trying to lug them down those stairs we went down. We had a delivery guy who was here unloading kegs in this spot, and he was typically at Old Town Pizza on a very regular basis. But one day he's finishing up work over in this area, and he starts to walk towards the stairway that we just came down, and then he smells some perfume. So he takes pause to look around because he thought he was down here alone, and he sees a woman dressed all in black at the bottom of the stairs. So this woman turns to look at him, and then she looks back up the stairs and slowly walks up, vanishes at the top right before the doorway. So this delivery guy didn't like this. He went to our bartender, Ann, and he asked Ann, does that woman hang out in the basement? Because he'd heard the stories before. And Ann said, yes, she's been seen in the basement. The very next day, this guy asked to be taken off of this route. He did not want to work at Old Town Pizza ever again. And somebody wanted to interview him about this experience for one of these local, like little quirky newspapers. He would not do this interview. He refused to talk to anybody about this experience from that point on. He wouldn't even speak to our bartenders about it. He was like done with the ghost stuff. We had another strange thing happen near that open door back there. This story begins with a bartender who used to work here named Ashley. And Ashley is interesting to me because she also worked at a haunted location for many years. She worked at one here in town, the White Eagle. It's one of the McMinimans properties. She was there for 6 years, didn't have a single experience there. And then 2 weeks before she's going to leave Old Town Pizza, she comes down here to work in that area over there and hears a loud amplified growling sound. And a couple of days after that, we had a group coming through with my coworker Doug, and Doug is another tour guide here. And this group had a medium along on the tour.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. So the medium shared a lot of interesting theories with Doug, and Doug relayed them to me, and now I relay them to all of my tour groups because I thought they were really interesting. So her first theory is she believes that growling sound isn't Nina. She thinks that's a malevolent spirit. And given the horrible history of this underground network, it would be so easy for me to believe that we had malevolent spirits down there. Like, it seems legit. Her more comforting theory is that she thinks Nina's soul can pass on whenever she'd like, but she just chooses to stay here to protect the people in the building from the malevolent spirits. I think that's really sweet. And Nina's really resonates with me, so I'm like, I think it's very comforting. So let's hold on to this comforting thought and let's head deeper into the darkness. We're gonna grab some lights here. Little lanterns. And we have a few different styles. I have about one per group, maybe a little extra since it's a slightly smaller group. For that one. Pass them back. Are we gonna any more back here? I have one more. Anyone want it? It's really bright. It's kind of kills the mood, but it's nice if you need to see. We'll keep the vibe. We may notice the beloved doll child Sorrow in the corner. And she is not a part of the history of the underground network or the building, but we keep her here for the vibes. She's cute. Sometimes my coworkers hide her inside of the network.
Oh, that's fun.
It's just like randomly yeah, I don't really find her. Watch your head here as we come under this pipe. We're going to take a seat inside of this parlor area. There's a dip in the floor right here where I'm standing. There's a pothole in the floor right here. And there's also a pothole under that chair on the other side. And there's more chairs down here if you didn't get one. Yes, the chair is usually somewhat stable in that hole. Are we ready for the seance? Yes. I love that you're like immediately down. My coworkers are not so down. They've like drawn the hard line with me. They're like, no seances, Caitlin. I was like, VIP experience.
Yeah.
Okay. Any ideas why they started to build these underground networks in Portland? For what reason did they begin this project?
Did it begin for the human trafficking, or were they repurposed for that?
It was repurposed for this. We are known for this, definitely, and we will talk about
Is
it.
it prohibition?
Prohibition is a good guess. It was not prohibition, though. Any other ideas? Okay. So we're known for all these horrible things, and the tunnel network is surprisingly started to be built because of more innocent reasons. We had businesses here in Old Town and Chinatown, and they wanted to connect their underground storage areas under their business. So kind of like the underground storage area we have for Old Town Pizza. It's easier to move your goods beneath surface level typically because you don't have to deal with all of the traffic and the sewage that people are throwing on the streets and theft. So usually it's easier to operate down here except for when it was flooding. And it did flood pretty regularly, and so they wouldn't use it very much during that time. Then they started to expand these networks more and more for all kinds of reasons, opportunistically. They were having gambling rings down here that were operating illegally. Gangs were running these, and it would be easier to escape from a police raid if you have a Portland of the network to escape into. There were opium dens, things like this, and they continue to expand and expand until they eventually reach the waterfront, along 19th Street. And this is where they start to use them for the shipping, unloading cargo, loading cargo from the ships. And this is where we start getting the tales of the Shanghai. Have we all heard this term, Shanghai? Yes. So we're known as the Shanghai tunnels. And this is a term that has caught on. It was used to describe crimping. Crimping is the correct word for Shanghai. And they started to, crimping means that you're forced to become a sailor. So they were sending a lot of men to Shanghai, China when they were going on these sailing voyages because we're doing a lot of trade with Shanghai at the time. And then one of these men who was sent there started to say he was Shanghaied, and this is how it caught on. But it was a very, very big practice here in Portland. Like, we were known as the Shanghai capital of the world. But the reason it was so huge here was because a lot of the time when ships would arrive in port, they would have a lot of their crew, a lot of those sailors, try to desert their positions to seek better jobs in the timber industry. Timber was much more respectable work at the time. I know we do have this association nowadays with sailing. It sounds like something hoity-toity, you know? But back then, sailing was not hoity-toity. It was like you were the dregs of society if you were a sailor. And sailors weren't equally protected under the law. It was just a terrible job to have. Like, these voyages are long and dangerous. How long do you think it takes to get to Shanghai, China during this time period?
Months, maybe?
More? Years. Sometimes up to 3 years before you touch home soil again. So you can imagine, like, sometimes these men would come back and their families thought they were dead. Sometimes they don't come back because there's very commonly food shortages on these ships. It's hard to pack for a journey that's this long. They don't have like refrigeration. So a lot of times there were outbreaks of scurvy, or even cannibalism was not unheard of on these ships. So men didn't want to be sailors. They would not want to do that at all. So this is why we would have to hire a crimper. So a captain would hire this crimper once he has all these men desert their positions in Portland. And he will pay the crimper $50 per able-bodied sailor. This was considered blood money. This translates to like $1,500 of today's money. Nothing to sneeze at. It was a lot for one person. But the crimpers were usually like a bar owner or a boarding house owner. This is their dirty little side hustle. And they'll go about their business typically by seeking a brand new looking guy in town. Someone who looks like he could do some labor. Someone who doesn't look like he's very well off. Someone who doesn't seem like he knows people here in town. Someone without friends. And then this crimper will invite this man to the bar that he owns, or maybe the boarding house. And the goal is to get the guy to rack up a tab. So once he racks up a tab, the crimper will present a contract. And yes, this contract was a legally binding contract. We have this idea that Shanghai sounds like kidnapping. It seems like something illegal, but it wasn't illegal. It was backed by the law because of this contract. So once you sign it, you are legally obligated to become a sailor. But many of these men didn't know what they were signing because the crimper would lie to the men about what they were signing because the crimper wants to make his job easier. So a lot of the times the crimper will say it's just a passenger manifest. You're just gonna go visit your family in Astoria, no big deal. And then boom, you're a sailor for 3 years. And some of these crimpers wouldn't even bother with lying, even though it was pretty easy to do. Many of these guys couldn't read. They wouldn't be able to call out the crimper on his lies. But some of these crimpers wanted to make their jobs as easy as possible. So many crimpers were dosing men with drugs, including opium. Typically, they would use opium drops inside of some kind of alcohol. And if the crimper owns the bar, he might have a guy who's in on it behind the bar, and he'll give that guy the nod, like, serve this one the special whiskey. And then once this man passes out from consuming these opium drops, they'll be brought into the Portland Underground Network, especially if they're in the bar. Sometimes they had these trap doors under the bars. If the crimper owns the bar, it's in his interests to not alarm his patrons, you know? He wants to make it inconspicuous when they're bringing these men through the bar who are passed out. So they'll take them through this trap door to a holding cell. and then they'll keep them in a holding cell until it's time to get on the ship. Once these men are on the ship, ideally they would stay passed out until they'll get all the way past the point where they couldn't swim back to shore anymore. This is usually like right beyond Astoria again. But sometimes they had martial escorts for these ships to deal with any deserters who may try to abandon their positions. We had crimping start to kind of fall out of practice around the end of World War I. So during that time, we had the rise of the popularity of steamships. And steamships don't require as many men to crew. They require more specialized labor. So you can't get any old Joe Schmo off the street to do the work. Then we started to have people forgetting about certain parts of this network underground here in Portland. And they started to have folks moving down here to use drugs, to seek shelter, things like this. And then within I think the past 50 years or so, more recent past, we had the police start coming through to close off areas of the network, to clear these people who had moved down here into the network out of here. And they boarded off a lot of the access points. They boarded off places in between businesses that don't want to be connected anymore. Caved in a lot of areas of the network. So now this is the last remaining part of the network that is accessible to the public. And before we go take a mosey, check it all out, I want to point out this organ behind me. This is a stunning antique pump organ that we brought into the space to tie in the story of the man who bought the Merchant Hotel in 1890, 4 years before that great flood. His name was Eugene Stebbinger. He was a renowned musician and organist, also a professor. And this still makes noise. It's pretty cool.
Wow. That's cool.
Okay, let's go take a walk. Please watch your head. Watch your head here. Watch your head here. And there's a platform in that back corner. Please just don't trip over it. So we do have a trapdoor up in our bar, up in Old Town Pizza. However, the trapdoor has been sealed off. Believe it or not, it's really hard to get a trapdoor that's up to code. I can point it out where it's all sealed off. It's like under the couch in that dining area we were packed into. We're gonna take a little trip down Imagination Lane now. Visualize it with me. You're a brand new strapping young lad here in Portland, Oregon. You do not have anywhere to stay the night, no friends here in town, not a lot of money. And you're approached by a charming gentleman on the street. He invites you to his boarding house just across the way. So convenient. You can't believe your luck. You decide you're going to take him up on this fine offer. And then later that evening, he invites you to the bar. And you are having a great time here in Portland. You are being introduced to the finest women. You are being served drink after drink. And very quickly, you're much more intoxicated than you thought you would be on your first night here in town. And you're sitting there, your head is starting to spin. You're trying to remember if you signed something. You're not sure. You are getting really foggy here. And then you hear that click of the latch and the creaking of the opening trapdoor into the bar. And you're brought by this crimper and his men through this trapdoor into the Portland Underground Network to a holding cell, much like the ones we'll see in the next room. Please watch your head.
Can we go in?
If you would like, yeah. So these are replica cells. They're not the originals. You may be able to tell from that newer wood on them. They're very, very similar to the ones crimpers would use to pack up men, hold them until it's time to get on the ship. And they would typically pack up to 6 men passed out in one cell. Every now and then you might have one of these guys wake up from their opium-induced haze. And if you did that, you might have the bright idea of trying to escape from this cell. So if he were to bust through this door, he would find the floors were covered with shards of broken glass. He'd find his shoes had been removed. If he tried to walk through this glass, the sound will alert his captors he's trying to escape. They'll come back, throw him in the cell. If it's to rain a lot in Portland and start flooding down here, do we think these guys are going to come back and check on them? No. They could drown in feet of water if they're passed out on those opium drops. So if you're feeling brave today, you can get in for a photo opportunity. Those lights will cast a fantastic, eerie horror movie glow on your face. If you want me to be your photographer, I'm happy to do so. Let me know. There's another cell back here too. This one has like a little window. You can see the parlor through it. The VIPs. Photo takers. Do you want to take a photo together? Oh yeah.
You got your phone? I'm still recording.
Here we do it. Do you want me to take yours?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, 1, 2, right.
It's like really spooky looking. I don't know. Like, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's so creepy. I kept seeing a shadow before you got in here.
1, 2, 3. Oh.
That was
Do
creepy.
you want one without flash?
Yeah, maybe without that.
No, I was gonna take it.
Okay. 1, 2, and 3. Hold it. Oh, we got it. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Any other photo takers? No.
Sitting down.
We sure going once?
I cannot be more.
Back under this pipe, bucket head. We're gonna see a lot of this rubble as we pass through the space. This is the old flooring. They had brick floor down here, and then they covered that with cement at one point, and then they ripped it all out when they were doing those sweeps where they're clearing people out of the underground network. On the wall here, we have this very special wood. Ooh, oh. This is slab wood. This is how we get the nickname Slab Town here in Portland. And it's a byproduct of the timber industry. When they're making a log to use for building, you have to cut off all that extra bark. This was a very accessible, affordable material for people to use for fuel for their heating. Over here we have the tunnel, and we're going to be passing through. There is some very uneven flooring in this tunnel. There's a little dip as soon as we walk in. There's also a pipe that we're going to be ducking under at one point in the middle, and then we're going to duck under another pipe at the end. Please watch your head. Watch. Yeah. Under this one. And then under this one too. Really low. You're gonna hear me doing my head counts a lot. And I haven't lost anyone, don't worry. But I am paranoid because Natasha, the one we passed by, she trained me. And she told me that she was coming out of the tunnel with a group one day and she had 2 extra people on her tour. And then by the time they had left this space, they were gone.
Oh.
They're still down here. No. Interesting. On this side, when we walked in, we have this boarded up stairway and you can see some light peeking through. We're underneath the courtyard. That's why it's a little cooler right here. And then back here behind me, there's this old trash incinerator. And we're asked very frequently if this was used for bodies. So we believe it wasn't for a few different reasons. The first is we were a high-end establishment here at the Merchant Hotel. We couldn't have our reputation tarnished by the horrible smell of burning flesh. We also had a mortician come down here and she said that it wouldn't have gotten hot enough to adequately burn a body. And then Natasha always loves to bring up that if you're gonna go through the trouble of hacking up a body to fit it in this trash incinerator, you've already done the work. You may as well just chuck it in the river. Everyone says, watch out for that coworker. And we have a lot of sightings in this area that we're going to pass through of male figures who are tall and pale, dressed all in black. I know it's a very unique description, but these guys were theorized to be soul traffickers by that medium. I do feel like that's totally what a crimper would be in the afterlife. Like, I don't know. That makes sense. But that gave me a chill, and now this area just down the hallway like really creeps me out. So please keep an eye out for those men in black. I do have a photo of one of them that I'll share with you during beer tasting, and it was taken in this spot where I'm standing right now. So we had a very, very famous crimper here in the Pacific Northwest, and his name was Joseph Bunko Kelly. So Joseph Bunko Kelly was given a very tall order one day. Captain asked him to find 22 men for a sailing voyage. And he's walking down the street that evening, and he stumbles upon an open trapdoor in the sidewalk. He's a curious guy, so he decides he's going to check it out. He gets down there and he finds a bunch of bodies of men laying all over the floor. They're just laying all over the floor. He looks around, assumes they must have broken in to steal booze in this like alcohol storage cellar. Then he looks around a little more and realizes this is not an alcohol storage cellar. This is a mortuary. These men had consumed embalming fluid by accident.
My God.
Yeah, as you can imagine, it's bad for you. These men had died. And Joseph Bunko Kelly was never one to miss a great opportunity. So he just packed these dead guys right up and sold them to a captain for $50 a head. Did the captain notice? Well, not until they got past the point in Astoria where the men would normally wake up from the opium drops. Gotta respect the hustle. Yeah. It's messed up. So we have this wall here. that was completely bricked over at one point, and then they created this door. We call it the Narnia door. I am going to need a brave sacrifice. I mean volunteer. It's a push.
Oh, to go first?
Yes. You didn't even know you're volunteering.
Bye.
Have a good trip.
Close it?
We're gonna be right behind you.
Okay.
Whoever wants to go next. You're all good in on this shit.
That was the waiver we signed.
Yeah, you read it, right? I know y'all can read. Alright, bon voyage.
Yeah.
Okay, on the floor here, we have this track where the door slides. This is relevant because we are diligently trained to close this door in between our tour groups leaving this space. We're pretty much the only people that come down here. There's sometimes a maintenance person that comes to work on the electrical boxes back down that hallway. Sometimes we have my boss come through to change a light bulb. Mostly just the tour guides and tour groups. So one day Natasha came down for her final tour of the evening and she closed the store. Then she comes in the next day for the first tour and finds the door 2 feet open. So if you open the door, you felt the resistance, right? It's like right about there that it hits the ground. She found it 2 feet open though, so this would have been like right about there. She's really confused. There's no wind currents down here. So she texts everyone on staff to see if someone had been down here to do some maintenance or change light bulbs. Nobody had been down here. So then we are all confused and we all start coming up with theories. We're thinking like maybe somebody found an access point for the Portland Underground that we don't know about. Maybe they were exploring down here without us realizing. So we look for access points. We look for signs of people exploring down here. We don't find anything. And now we've just kind of started to accept that, well, we don't really know, but maybe the spirits are just trying to get our attention. Because do they need to open the door to get through it? I don't think spirits need to do that. So I think that maybe they just get bored down here. They want us to notice them. And maybe we're their entertainment, kind of like they're ours. Behind us, we have this high chair. The creepy high chair. It's a part of the restaurant that we're about to be underneath as soon as we get down that hallway. And that restaurant was Hobo's, the same one that we had that menu for in the beginning. High chair looks like it was built in the 1960s or 1970s, and that restaurant was there for a very long time. So it's probably been down here for ages. Sometimes Doug, my coworker, puts Sarah the doll inside of it.
Oh my god.
She loves that. So I mentioned that I have never had a conclusive sighting or anything in this area, right? But I did have an experience right here in this spot just a month ago. I had a group who was here for one of my teen tours, and a couple of these teens on the tour were super excited about the haunted stuff, and they brought some spirit boxes from home. Has anybody not heard of spirit boxes? Anyone not know what those are?
I do.
You don't know what they are?
I do.
Oh, you do know what they are?
It's AM, FM radio frequencies for energies to speak to you.
Yeah, exactly. So like any kind of signal that comes through is a message from the other side. So these teens, as we're approaching this door, they get really excited, and they're not standing anywhere near me, but I hear them like get really stoked, and then they run over to me and they're like, "We heard Nina! We heard Nina!" And I am like, "What? You heard what?" And they're like, "We heard Nina's name over our spirit box." And I was like, "That's interesting." And then we get through the door, and now they're standing right near me, and I hear them go, "Let's ask if Nina's with us." And they ask, and I hear the spirit box respond, "Yes." So that's the strangest experience I have had down here so far. No sightings, but still kind of weird. There was also a ghost hunting show that did an episode down here, and right in this spot under this light, they heard "It's dark in here" on their spirit box, and this light goes on. You can look up this video clip of them coming through. Yeah. I haven't actually watched the clip, but I've just been told about it secondhand a few times. So check it out if you're into that kind of thing.
Look it up.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. Some old storage areas back here in the restaurant. Watch your head. Right here you can see hobos through the floor. And back here, if you look up these stairs, you can see hobos from the other access point. We're not allowed to go up there, but you can definitely check it out right there at the bottom. There's this creepy walk-in freezer. I'm totally cool with y'all checking things out. I encourage curiosity.
Oh.
And then this back corner has this stairway, and this goes up to street level. Sometimes we'll hear a really loud noise down here, and this is just cars or people going over the grate on top. There's no jump scares down here, so if it's anything outside of this area that you hear that's loud, we all need to run. But in this spot, don't sweat it. And this is a cute photo opportunity, but this is where they used to start the Portland Underground tour. And if you take your light and kind of shine it up the stairs, you can have a little Scooby-Doo moment in your photo. I think it's cute. It seems underwhelming until you see the photos, and then you're like, oh, that's a good photo. So let me know if you want a photographer, and then we will flip around and head back. Anybody want to take the photo off? Yeah, I was about to peer pressure y'all. Okay, you said how do I do it? You can shine it up the stairs.
Oh, we're about to climb up.
Yeah, kind of put your foot up. Do you want to get both of you in the next one? Yeah. And well, Hod's to move some of that.
Do you want to go?
Yeah. Thank you. Of course. I love it.
Real eerie. I'd be creeped out to come down here and go do a meter with these power boxes.
Do you want to have both of you looking back for the next one?
Oh, yeah.
Have to go
Ready?
for the power
1,
grip.
2, 3.
For the switch.
Hold it. And we got it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Do you want to do one? Nice. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And one more. 1, 2, and 3. It's Scooby-Doo time. Okay. Good. Anybody else? Good?
Back we go.
So yeah, they used to go backwards through the space that we just went through. But just this year, we added a whole new space to the Portland Underground tour that's never been a part of the tour before, and we're going to be heading there next. But we will have to go back above ground to get there. You can see the other 4,000 square foot space through this window back here, but we're not allowed to crawl through the window. Boo. So we have to go back through the courtyard, all that. But first, we're going to talk about this box. So this box is currently just used for storage, but it is very similar to the boxes that crimpers used for their other horrible side hustle. And this was trafficking women into prostitution. So these crimpers would lock women in these boxes for days on end to break their spirits before they were sold. A lot of crimpers said this took 3 to 4 days in a box to break a woman down. There was one crimper who liked to brag that he could do it in 3 to 4 hours. I personally would hope that I would just get so hungry after missing one meal in this box that the hangry monster would bust me out of there and mess all those guys up. Don't worry, I've eaten today. Watch your head. There was another famous crimper on the West Coast whose name was Shanghai Kelly. And Shanghai Kelly was bigger in the San Francisco area, but he was responsible for one of the largest crimpings in history. And he was also a really twisted guy because he was crimped himself, and then he decided, dream job, gonna be a crimper. So he was asked by a captain to acquire 100 men, not 22 like Joseph Bunko Kelly. That's small time. He was asked to acquire 100. So he is going to have to get creative. No one has done this before. He decides he's going to host a birthday booze cruise. He charters a steamship for the occasion. He posts about it in the local newspaper, and very quickly gets plenty of people aboard to meet this need for 100 men. And they take off from port. He serves them that special whiskey. And then by the time everyone is passed out, he's ready to drop them off at that ship where they're needed. And he drops them off, and then legend has it that he is feeling smug with himself. He is like, I am the legendary Shanghai Kelly. I am the best crimper there ever was. But then he realized he didn't think his plan through. It's gonna look suspicious, right? If he shows up back in port after this highly publicized booze cruise and he doesn't have anybody on his ship. So then Shanghai Kelly gets lucky. He hears about a ship nearby that struck rock and they needed some help out. So Shanghai Kelly to the rescue. He goes and swoops up their whole crew, brings them aboard, serves them some of the fine whiskey. And then by the time they're back in port, everyone is drunk and jolly, and no one was the wiser. The legend of Shanghai Kelly. Watch your step. Maybe you'll catch one of the men in black. Watch your head right down here. As I hit my head on it. That's why I wear this clip. It's like that'll be your defense. Watch your head here. We're gonna be heading all the way back down the tunnel this time, and we're gonna hit the parlor on the left-hand side where we had started. There is a pipe in the middle with a very low wire that's hiding right behind it. Please watch out for the wire. The flooring is also very uneven at the end. Please watch your step. This is that pipe with the wire behind it. Very uneven floors down here. Another low pipe. Take your lanterns here, they can see. Oh, yeah. You know, we're all acclimated to that darkness. I'll take your lanterns. Thank you. And head count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Great. Nobody's lost. Nobody extra. Love that. Good stuff. Let's head back up and we'll go to the beer tasting space. Even if you're not beer tasting, definitely come to the beer tasting space. It's pretty cool.
And so I couldn't respond them right away. And then, but yeah, and then the last day, but yeah, or at least most of the day. And
Back into the courtyard.
Shanghai.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Yeah, we took like the field trip for that when I was like in the 4th grade, I think. I think it was. I don't know if I did.
If you go and hang out in Nina's sitting nook, check out the bricks in there. There's an inscribed brick with her name on it. It's a bit of a scavenger hunt, so we'll need a little activity later. And check out the low handle here too. That's kind of unusual. Looks like it's for the fairies, right? I was told locking mechanisms were lengthwise, so they like went into the ground, and that's why I was like, oh. If you come through this door last, please close it behind you. Another coming down this very steep stairway here. If you're a horror movie fan, I call these the Evil Dead stairs. I recommend taking this backwards or sideways, and one at a time. When we get down there, there's a creepy service elevator, and it hasn't been used in a really long time. We don't know how stable it is, so please don't get any of your body or your possessions near this elevator, because if you or anything falls, we can't retrieve it. Yeah, one at a time. Let's go.
No, it's not. You just, yeah. Go slow.
Good looking out. Y'all are troopers.
We both have fallen before. So.
Yeah.
I've fallen down these stairs too. It's not fun. I have to go up there with my bus tub at the end. I'm like, ugh. So there's that window in the back there, and that's where we were looking on the other side. Right there, yes, where the Narnia was. So we're creating a lot of scenes in this newly acquired space. These are things you might have encountered in the Portland Underground Network during its heyday. So before we see any of those, though, we will see that service elevator as we come around the corner on the left.
There's a hole there. And there's a hole.
I was told this service elevator was found mysteriously open just a few months ago. Don't know what that's about. But on the other side, we have this Lady of the Night bedroom. And yes, the Ladies of the Night worked in the Portland Underground as well as in the Merchant Hotel. The ones in the Portland Underground were definitely serving those rougher clients. And we're gonna come under this archway, watch your head. And check out this opium den back here. Opium not included. So these bunk beds of the time period typically, or sorry, whoa, I got that backwards. These opium dens of the time period had bunk beds typically, like the ones you see in the back of our opium den. And that bottom bunk at the opium den was the most expensive, the most coveted bunk. Because when you're very high on opium, you do not want to try to get off those top bunks. That is a safety hazard. So you would be wise to invest in that prime real estate at the bottom. Watch your head. We have our gambling table, so you can play a little game with the spirits before you head out.
That's cool.
And we have the beautiful antique cast iron jail cell doors here. These were brought into the space for aesthetics. And then my favorite thing in the space is back here. This stunning stained glass is an original fixture from the Merchant Hotel. And this was found underneath the building in a dark corner, and they brought it into the space to give it some new life. And there's some other beautiful stained glass windows that you can check out inside of the bar when you go back up. I just love this one. Let's look at it. And we're licensed just within the past 6 months or so to do our beer tasting here in our very own speakeasy.
Wow, really? No way.
This is my other favorite thing, this antique bar top. I'm gonna pour up our beer here in just a sec, but first I have some tokens to pass out. And these can be exchanged by any of you at the bar. Even if you don't drink alcohol, you could trade them in for non-alcoholic things. We have like Italian sodas and stuff like that. And then we'll pour this beer. So, quick beer spiel for my beer tasters. We are Old Town Pizza and Brewing. We brew our own beer just across the river. And the first one we'll try today is the Pilsner. This comes in at 4.9% alcohol. Tasting notes are flowers, honey, and biscuits. This is the Shanghai IPA. This one is coming in at 6.5%. Tasting notes on this one are also kind of floral, but with hints of pine and grapefruit. Okay. Quick show of hands. Who's drinking again? One more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 3 cups. Did anybody smell any perfume along our route? Oh, I gotta go.
Stuff because I put perfume in it.
What kind of perfume do you wear?
Oh, some Bath and Body Works.
Is it like floral?
Called champagne toast. I don't know what that means.
Oh.
I love that one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. I don't know how to describe the smell though.
Yeah.
Like sweet, probably.
Yeah. So Nina's perfume smells like lilac. So anything floral could be like mixed up, I think. But I don't know if that would be similar. I wear like a rosemary smell, so it doesn't get confusing. Oh, this is a lot for your tasting.
Yes.
No, you don't have no pressure if you don't want to drink all of it. I'm just like, we will waste all this beer if we don't fill these up. If you want a little top off later, I'm happy to help you out.
What do you think about that?
Has anybody been to Kel's Irish Pub? Here
We
in
did the
town?
Shamrock run, but then it was popping obviously
yeah.
for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh yeah. I drove past and I was like, whoa. So Kel's Irish Pub is like walking distance from here, and they're another haunted location. And you can also see flood marks, like watermarks from the Great Flood of 1894 at Kel's Irish Pub. But their underground area is now a cigar lounge, one of 2 cigar lounges in Portland. And the cigar lounge is haunted because it used to be an opium den. And then this like opium den burned down. And this man, whose name was David Campbell, he helped to get a lot of people out of this fire. He was a firefighter, a local hero in Portland. I've been told he's very interesting, and my coworker has a crush on him, even though he's been dead for a really long time. But he did a lot of great things here in Portland. He helped to get a lot of people out of this fire at Kel's, and so he's still seen in their cigar lounge to this day. But he didn't die in that fire. He died in an oil fire, and I guess he just wanted to spend eternity in Kel's. Makes sense? It's a good one. Anybody heard of the haunted parking lot in Portland? No. Cool. So, has anyone been to Ravens Manor?
Yes.
Okay, so Ravens Manor has this parking lot next to it, maybe behind it. But the this parking lot is probably the most cursed location in Portland.
Oh, sick.
It used to be a native burial ground, and then they thought, perfect location for our first public execution grounds.
Yeah.
That's a
Oh,
sick.
that's double, man.
Double cursed. And then everything that they've tried to build there has burned down. And so they, went with the parking lot and pave it over. And they do like a haunted tour where they walk through the parking lot, and they have like spirit boxes on that tour. And my coworker did the tour, and he said every time they walk through that area, the spirit boxes just go wild.
That's great.
Yeah. And I think that in some of the surrounding buildings, people have seen like reflections of weird things in the windows and stuff like that. Fun stuff. So yeah, check out the haunted parking lot and Kel's haunted opium den / cigar lounge.
Raven Manners is cool.
It is
Cool
so
bar.
cute. I love Raven's Manor. I actually applied to work at Raven's Manor before I applied for this position.
I don't understand that.
I think similar vein, Do we want to see ghost photos?
Yeah,
Are we into that?
absolutely.
Okay. I'll pour Shanghai in a minute. Does anyone want a little more of the Pilsner?
Go for it.
Why?
Not
Anyone else?
Yeah, sure.
One more?
After you finish that up.
Yeah. Finish it. Okay, let me pull out my phone here so I can show you these pictures. I have a couple on my phone, and then I have a couple on this tablet that we keep back here. The tablet ones are like our older photos that have been captured within the past couple of years. But the photos that I have on my phone were captured like in 2024. So they're the most recent ones.
This is been a couple of months, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
2021.
So the first one was taken just like 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. And Natasha sent it to me. It was after her last tour of the day. One of her guests on the tour came and showed this to her. And it's taken inside of Nina's sitting nook in the back of the restaurant, but it's looking out into the courtyard through the window. And we're looking at this very dapper man in the window. You can come up and you can zoom in, zoom
weird.
out, whatever you would like.
Whoa.
Ooh, I don't like that.
That's cool.
And Natasha said she went and checked for reflections and things like that, see if she could find anyone dressed like this in the courtyard. She's also a bit of a skeptic.
You're running out there with a baseball bat.
Right?
Take you, Nina.
Consecrated baseball bat. That's freaky.
A little freaky. And then there's another strange thing in this photo. So the person who took the photo is right over in the other side of the photo in the mirror. So if I zoom out, there's this mirror over here. And you can see the person with the camera right here in the corner. But then if you look back here, what is this with the little white eyes? Like what? It could just be like someone's shadow, but it looks like a little spirit.
Yeah, it does.
I don't know. It kind of looks like something from Spirited Away.
Oh, yeah. That's freaky.
Yeah, Natasha sent this, and I was like, I know I'm supposed to be looking at the man in the window, but what about the man in the mirror? Or maybe not the man, the thing in the mirror. I don't know. It like maybe it's like someone's hood. I don't know. It just looks like little eyes. Okay, so this next one is back here in this mirror. And she was photographed just in the end of January in one of Doug's tours. I was out of town and visiting my family in California, and they sent this to me. But she's in the middle. I call her the blue lady. She's